Emma Parker sat alone in her apartment in Seattle, staring at the rain sliding down her window. The city lights blurred behind the glass, creating colorful reflections across the room. It had been 10 years since her mother passed away from cancer, yet some days the pain still felt fresh. Her mother, Sarah Parker, had been her entire world. Emma often found herself reading old letters, looking through family photos, and listening to voice messages she had saved over the years. Whenever life became difficult, she would revisit those memories. One rainy Thursday evening, after returning from work, she noticed an envelope resting on her kitchen table. At first, she assumed it was another bill. But something felt strange. There was no stamp, no return address, only her name written neatly across the front. Emma frowned. She picked it up. The moment she saw the handwriting, her heart nearly stopped. It was her mother's handwriting. Her hands began trembling. That wasn't possible. Her mother had died a decade ago. Slowly, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded letter and an old photograph. The photograph showed her mother standing beside a young boy who appeared to be around 6 years old. Emma stared at the image. She had never seen the child before. Turning the picture over, she found a message written on the back. "Find your brother before it's too late." Her heart raced. Brother. Emma had spent her entire life believing she was an only child. Confused and frightened, she unfolded the letter. Tears instantly filled her eyes. The handwriting was unmistakable. Every curve and stroke belonged to her mother. The letter read, "If you're reading this, it means many years have passed since I left this world. There is something I never had the courage to tell you. You have a brother. His name is Michael. What happened between us was never his fault. I hope one day you will find him and tell him the truth. Please don't hate me for keeping this secret. I only wanted to protect both of you. Love always, Mom." Emma read the letter again. And again. Nothing made sense. Why would her mother hide something so important? Why had she never mentioned a son? Where was Michael now? Questions flooded her mind. That night she barely slept. The next morning she drove to her late mother's best friend, Linda. If anyone knew the truth, it would be her. Linda looked shocked when Emma showed her the letter. For several moments she remained silent. Then tears appeared in her eyes. "You know about Michael." Emma nodded. "Who is he?" Linda sighed deeply. "I promised your mother I'd never tell anyone." "Please." Linda looked at the photograph. "Your mother had Michael before she met your father." Emma felt stunned. "He was my half-brother." Linda nodded. "When Michael was very young, there were difficult circumstances. Your mother struggled financially. She was raising him alone." Emma listened carefully. One day social services became involved. Michael entered foster care temporarily. Temporarily. Linda lowered her eyes. "That's what your mother thought." Emma's stomach tightened. "What happened?" "A misunderstanding. Legal problems. Paperwork mistakes." Linda's voice cracked. "She lost him." The words hit Emma like a punch. Lost him. Her mother had spent years searching but never succeeded. The foster system eventually relocated Michael. Records became difficult to access. Time passed, and somehow the family became separated forever. At least that's what everyone believed. Emma wiped tears from her face. "Why didn't she tell me?" Linda looked heartbroken. "Because she carried enormous guilt. She was afraid you'd judge her." Emma sat silently. For the first time, she understood a sadness she had often noticed in her mother's eyes. A sadness she could never explain. Now she knew. Her mother had spent decades missing a child. That evening Emma made a decision. She was going to find Michael. No matter how long it took. The search began online. She contacted agencies, requested public records, spoke with investigators. Most leads ended in disappointment. Weeks passed, then months. Finally one investigator called. "I found someone who might be your brother." Emma nearly dropped the phone. The man lived in Chicago. His name was Michael Reed. The age matched. The foster records matched. Everything pointed to him. 2 weeks later Emma boarded a plane. Her hands shook during the flight. She kept staring at the old photograph. Would he look like their mother? Would he want to meet her? Would he even believe her? When she arrived in Chicago, she spent hours sitting in a coffee shop across from the address she had been given. Fear kept her from walking over. What if he hated her? What if he hated their mother? Eventually she gathered enough courage. She crossed the street, knocked on the door. Footsteps approached. The door opened. A man stood before her. Around 35 years old. Dark hair, brown eyes, strong features. The moment Emma saw him, her breath caught. He looked exactly like their mother. For several seconds neither spoke. "Can I help you?" he asked. Emma swallowed hard. Are you Michael Reed? Yes. Her eyes filled with tears. I think, I'm your sister. Silence. Complete silence. Michael stared at her, then laughed bitterly. Wrong house. He began closing the door. Emma quickly showed him the photograph. His expression changed instantly. He froze. Slowly, he took the picture. His hands trembled. Where did you get this? It belonged to our mother. The air seemed to leave his lungs. For a moment Emma thought he might cry. Instead his face hardened. Our mother. He shook his head. She wasn't my mother. Emma felt confused. What do you mean? A mother doesn't abandon her child. The words cut deeply. Years of pain lived inside them. I came because I know the truth, Emma said softly. Michael laughed again. No, you came because somebody filled your head with stories. Michael, I spent 18 years wondering why nobody wanted me. His voice cracked. Do you know what that's like? Emma remained silent. You don't. He handed back the photograph. Please leave. Then he closed the door. Emma stood there for several minutes. Heartbroken. The reunion she imagined had turned into disaster. Yet something inside her refused to quit. She stayed in Chicago. Days passed, then weeks. Gradually she learned more about Michael's life. The foster homes, the loneliness, the constant rejection, the anger. Every piece of information made her understand him better. One afternoon she saw him sitting alone in a park. This time he didn't walk away. She sat beside him quietly. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally Michael broke the silence. Why are you still here? Emma looked ahead. Because your family. Michael laughed softly. You don't even know me. I want to. He stared at her. For the first time, some of his anger seemed weaker. Emma handed him the letter. The original. Michael hesitated before taking it. Then he began reading. As he reached the final lines, tears filled his eyes. He quickly looked away. Emma pretended not to notice. Several minutes passed. Finally he whispered, she really wrote this. Yes. His hands shook. For years he had believed nobody loved him. Nobody wanted him. Nobody searched for him. Now that belief was beginning to crack. Not all at once, but enough. The following weeks changed everything. Slowly, cautiously, Michael allowed Emma into his life. They shared stories, memories, questions, pain, laughter. For the first time in decades, neither felt completely alone. One evening they visited their mother's grave together. The sun was setting. Orange light covered the cemetery. Michael stood silently before the headstone. Tears rolled down his face. I spent my whole life being angry at you, he whispered. Emma stood beside him. The wind moved gently through the trees. I wish we'd had more time. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Michael smiled sadly. You know something? What? I always wanted a sister. Emma laughed through her tears. And I always wanted a brother. The two embraced. Years of separation, years of pain, years of misunderstanding, all beginning to heal, not because the past had changed, but because the truth had finally been found. And sometimes the greatest gift isn't changing what happened. It's finally understanding it. Michael stood silently beside his mother's grave long after the sun had disappeared below the horizon. The cemetery had become quiet. Most visitors had already left, and only the sound of the wind moving through the trees remained. Emma stood beside him. Neither wanted to leave. For years, both of them had carried pain they couldn't fully understand. Now, standing together before the woman who had connected their lives, they finally felt something neither had experienced in a very long time. Peace. As darkness settled across the cemetery, Michael finally spoke. You know what's strange? Emma looked at him. What? I spent my whole life imagining this moment. His eyes remained fixed on the gravestone. I thought if I ever found her, I'd yell at her. Emma listened quietly. I thought I'd tell her how angry I was. His voice cracked. But now, he stopped. Emma gently touched his shoulder. Now what? Michael smiled sadly. Now I just wish I could hug her. Tears filled Emma's eyes. The realization broke something inside both of them. For years, anger had protected Michael from heartbreak. But now the truth had replaced that anger with grief. Real grief. The grief of a son who finally understood that he had never been forgotten. The drive back to the city was silent. Both were lost in thought. Neither realized how much their lives were about to change. Over the next few months, Emma and Michael grew closer. They spoke almost every day. Video calls became part of their routine. They shared childhood memories, favorite movies, embarrassing stories, dreams they had never told anyone else. For the first time in their lives, they had a sibling. And surprisingly, it felt natural. One evening while talking on the phone, Emma laughed. You know, Mom would probably be happy we're finally getting along. Michael smiled. Probably. Then his expression became serious. Emma, yeah, thank you. She paused. For what? For not giving up on me. Emma felt emotional. There was never a chance I was giving up. Michael looked away from the camera. No one had ever fought to stay in his life before. Not like that. A few weeks later, Emma invited him to Seattle. To her surprise, he agreed. When Michael arrived, she spent the entire weekend showing him around the city. They visited the waterfront, explored local markets, walked through parks. For the first time, they acted less like strangers and more like family. Everything seemed perfect, until one unexpected discovery changed everything. It happened while Emma was organizing old boxes she had inherited after her mother's death. Most contained ordinary items, old photographs, documents, letters, childhood drawings. Then she found a small locked wooden box. She frowned. She had never seen it before. Curious, she searched through the storage containers until she found a tiny key taped beneath one of the lids. Her heart began racing. Slowly, she unlocked the box. Inside were dozens of letters. Every single one addressed to Michael. Emma stared in shock. The earliest letters had been written when he was 7 years old. Others continued through his teenage years. There were hundreds, maybe more. None had ever been sent. Tears filled her eyes. She immediately called Michael. When he arrived that evening, she placed the box on the table. "What is it?" he asked. Emma couldn't speak. Instead, she opened the lid. Michael looked confused. Then he saw the letters. His expression changed instantly. "What are these?" Emma handed him one. The envelope read, "To my son Michael." His hands started trembling. Slowly, he opened it. The letter inside was written by their mother. "Michael, I don't know where you are today. I don't know if you're safe. But I want you to know that I love you. I will never stop searching for you. Not a single day passes without thinking about you. Love, Mom." Michael froze. He opened another, and another, and another. Every letter contained the same message. Hope, love, determination. She had never stopped writing. Never stopped believing. Never stopped missing him. By midnight, Michael was sitting on the floor surrounded by letters. Tears streamed down his face. Emma sat beside him. Neither spoke. Words weren't necessary. The letters said everything. The following weeks became emotional. Michael read every letter. Some were written during holidays. Others on birthdays. Many described events from Emma's childhood. Their mother had written them because she hoped one day Michael would read them. One letter changed him completely. It was written shortly before her death. "Michael, if you ever read this, please don't spend your life being angry. Life is too short. I made mistakes, many mistakes, but losing you was never a choice. You were my first child. My first reason to believe I could become a better person. No matter where life takes you, remember that I loved you every day of my life. Love always, Mom." Michael cried harder than he ever had before. Years of pain poured out. Years of loneliness. Years of unanswered questions. The letters healed wounds he had carried since childhood. But they also created a new challenge. What came next? For so long, Michael's identity had been built around loss, around abandonment, around surviving alone. Now that truth had changed, who was he supposed to become? Months later, he received an answer. One afternoon, Emma called unexpectedly. "You need to come to Seattle." Michael laughed. "That's not suspicious at all. I'm serious." "What happened?" Emma hesitated. "I found something." "What?" "A name." Michael frowned. "What name?" "The social worker who handled your case." Silence. Michael sat upright. "What?" Emma nodded. "I tracked down old records." His pulse quickened. For decades, that chapter had remained a mystery. Now someone connected to it was still alive. A week later they traveled together to a small town outside Portland. The retired social worker was nearly 80 years old. Her name was Margaret Collins. When she opened the door and saw Michael, she immediately became emotional. "Oh my God." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know who you are." Michael stood frozen. "You do?" Margaret nodded. "I never forgot you." Inside her home, she shared information that neither sibling expected. The separation had never been intended to be permanent. There had been administrative mistakes, communication failures, missing paperwork. By the time authorities realized what happened, Michael had already been moved through multiple foster placements. Finding him became increasingly difficult. Their mother spent years searching. Margaret confirmed it. "Your mother never stopped looking." Michael lowered his head. Tears fell silently. For the first time, an independent witness confirmed everything. His mother had fought for him. The truth was undeniable. When they left Margaret's house, neither sibling spoke for several minutes. Finally Emma smiled. "You okay?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah." Then he laughed. A genuine laugh. Maybe the first truly carefree laugh of his adult life. "I think I finally am." The years continued passing. Emma and Michael became inseparable. Holiday dinners, family vacations, birthday celebrations, everything they had missed during childhood. They tried to make up for lost time. One Christmas, while decorating Emma's house, Michael looked around and smiled. "This is weird." "What is?" He laughed. "I spent years thinking I had nobody." Emma smiled. "And now?" Michael looked at the crowded room. Friends, family, children running around, laughter, everywhere. And his sister standing beside him. "Now I realize I was wrong." Emma hugged him. The emotional journey wasn't perfect. There were still difficult days. Still painful memories. Still moments when they wondered what life might have been if things had happened differently. But they no longer faced those questions alone. And that made all the difference. Years later, Emma often thought about the rainy evening when she discovered that mysterious letter. A single envelope had changed everything. It had uncovered secrets, healed wounds, reunited a family. Most importantly, it had proven something powerful. Love doesn't disappear because of distance. It doesn't disappear because of time. And it doesn't disappear because life becomes complicated. Sometimes love survives quietly in old letters, hidden memories, and unanswered questions. Waiting patiently for the day it can finally find its way home. And for Emma and Michael, that day had finally arrived. The end. Heart.